For more on the economic trends and what it all means to you, let's bring in David Stryzewki, CEO of Sound Planning Group. David, welcome back. Good to have you. So the markets seem to like the producer price index dip today. What's the significance of the PPI today, and why does it matter to the average American?
Yeah, hey, great question, and always wonderful to be with you. The producer price index helps us to understand what are the input costs for producing things. The market loves this number because when it comes in a little bit lower, that says, well, hey, then they can, pass along some savings, or maybe they're going to be more profitable as opposed to seeing some losses right now. I don't put a whole lot of weight into these headline numbers when they first come out, especially when we're talking about tenths of percentages or not, because we all know that inflation ebbs and flows. It doesn't just go in a straight line always. It tends to go both up and down. But the weird part about this PPI report is that we had diesel fuel go down 12.4% over this time frame, but we only saw a minus 0.1 on the PPI. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I think that there's a lot more inflation actually in our system than we're being told. And that really ultimately comes down to the fact that inflation is built and caused by printing of money. And we are doing that in excess right now, almost more than ever before.
What about on the world stage? How may the attacks in the Red Sea affect prices for us? Inflation.
Yeah, well, prior to even this Russia invasion of Ukraine, we had peace in the earth and everything was working out just fine. And then we saw all this disruption. And so to your point, we're looking at gas prices here this morning going through the roof as we've now begun to engage more so in this as attacks have continued on. As we've seen ships that have been taken over, and so this is very inflationary. In fact, just even these ships going all the way around Africa now instead of going through the channel there, that's very inflationary because the costs are going to be a whole lot higher. So that's going to show up in the PPI report here in January and February. But hopefully we don't lose more ships or end up in World War III prior to that moment.
Right.
But I'm very concerned that as we engage with Iran, or these terrorist groups, that Iran takes action, and that incites more of those terrorist groups to pop up. And I have fear that we have many of them here in the United States illegally crossing our borders.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. We've already seen oil prices increase. So just to recap, producer prices have declined 3 months in a row now. A drop in diesel helped. That's good. The recent jobs report seemed good. Government jobs led the way. But what's going on in the Red Sea is concerning, as you mentioned. And the inflation numbers increased yesterday, challenging that mainstream narrative that everything is great with Bidenomics and people shouldn't feel as bad as they do, which many feel bad because inflation has risen by more than 17% in the last 3 years. According to the CPI, not to mention the record high credit card debt people have racked up paying for high food, energy, shelter costs. Meanwhile, President Biden's post yesterday, did you see this, took aim at Trump after Trump, during a recent interview with Lou Dobbs, said that when there's an economic crash, he hopes it's in the next 12 months because he doesn't want to be Herbert Hoover. Watch this.
He's acknowledging that my economy is doing pretty darn well because he doesn't want that to continue. Yes.
Also said that his economic performance is
because he doesn't want that to continue. Yes, understand, he's already Herbert Hoover. He's the only other president who lost jobs during his term.
Okay, so Biden also said that his economic performance is making goods more affordable and said that Trump wants the economy to crash to help him get elected. What's your reaction to POTUS's post?
Well, number one, Bidenomics is not actually a real economic theory that you can study, nor does it actually have a real track record of doing anything very specifically. We've printed and spent. That's the reason why our government's up. The economy's been positive and didn't go into a recession last year. The statement that he's like spiking the ball that, he didn't have losses in jobs and Trump did. Well, Trump actually had the strongest economy in the United States history. Every single nationality was doing better underneath that economy. And then everything ultimately flipped with COVID. And then, we have all the recourse that's happened as a result of, overspending, overprinting, PPP, ERC loans that went out there. And, so for Biden to go and spike the ball, this is just political fodder. Ultimately, we're in that time frame here of presidential elections right now, and he has nothing to run on because ultimately the economy is being eroded very significantly right now. And he doesn't really want to talk about this versus that, like actual moves that were made that had cause and effect value to them. And so I'm going to say that that President Biden read his teleprompter just fine, and he's speaking to his base.
Right. And not to mention that inflation rose by over 17% in his first 3 years in office, but Trump's total inflation was 8%. David Stryzewki, CEO of Sound Planning, thanks for your time today, as always.